A former quiet achiever, Serena Low helps introverted professionals rewrite the beliefs that keep them small, silent, and unseen. Drawing from her expertise in mental health and root cause therapy, she empowers her clients to communicate with calm confidence, lead with authenticity, and step into visibility on their own terms. Through workshops, coaching, and her 12 weeks program, Serena supports those ready for an identity upgrade to stop hiding and start leading.
I'm from Singapore. I lived there for 36 years before I migrated to Australia. And I've been in Melbourne since then.
So how long have you been in Melbourne for?
19 years.
That's a long time.
It
And
is.
how has been your journey as a migrant?
It has been very interesting. It's when I started, I thought it was going to be easy because I can speak English. But then I realized there is English and there is English. And depending on where you grew up and the kind of people around you, there is a different way of communicating and understanding that is beyond the language. And I know you will understand this too. It's to do with the culture. So it's a completely new culture. I didn't understand a lot of the slang, and even the accents are different. They tell me that people from, let's say, Queensland speak English, with a different accent from people in, let's say, South Australia or in Victoria. And even like between country and city, that's different as well. And I thought, wow, that is so interesting. It's like starting all over again, going back to school. That's how it felt.
Yeah, and as a migrant myself as well, I felt that change. I worked in other countries where people spoke English, but when I arrived in Australia, I just realized that English was not the same English as they speak here. So I had to go through a learning curve until I felt comfortable with my level of English. And it's not because I did not have a proficient English, but it's because I had this mindset that my English was not good enough for the people here. So I always apologized and I introduced myself saying English is my second language. So once I stopped doing that and started being more unapologetic, I think my confidence grew. So I wanted to ask if you had any like self-esteem issues. How did that barrier, that language barrier, impacted you as a person?
I think the English language as such did not impact me so much, but I've also noticed that the way I speak has evolved. You know how it is when you go back to your home country, you speak a different way, right? So in my home country, we have something called Singlish, which is like a mixture of Singaporean English, but it incorporates other dialects. And only people who have been born and grew up in Singapore will understand it because it's like a mishmash of different words. So when I'm with fellow Singaporeans, that's how I talk, and it's automatic. But when I'm, let's say, here with mostly white people, I speak differently again. It's almost like I mirror or absorb based on who I'm with. And I think all migrants do that kind of code switching, that kind of ability to pick up different accents and to have a very finely tuned ear that makes you somehow more flexible. It's actually a great gift. It's amazing.
I definitely agree. And I think it's not only the ear, but also the vision, because we can see life through different lenses and perspectives, and we're used to that, and we acknowledge that there are several different perspectives, and I think that makes us more resilient and more able to interact with diversity in a curious way. And I wanted to ask if you had experiences where people treated you in this way and they were curious about your background, your heritage in a positive way.
I know that very soon after we arrived, one of the best things that happened for my family was that we found a local church that became like a second family to us. Just the way they embraced us and, took us on, because when I arrived, my older child was 4 years old and I was pregnant with my second child. So I think immediately they saw, oh, migrant family, pregnant, another baby on the way, and they just went straight into action. Like they would, I didn't realize that using secondhand things was such a big thing here because it's different where I come from. And they would just go around and, collect and ask and just bring stuff over to our rental house. And I remember my pastor rolling up his sleeves to mow the lawn for us. And I thought, oh my gosh, where I come from, the pastor is like on a pedestal, it's an authority figure. You never expect the pastor to roll up their sleeves and mow your lawn for you just because they saw that you are new in the country, a bit lost with things and don't really know how to, have never lived in a home that has a backyard because we all lived in apartments. And so little things like that, I think all these gestures of kindness, they really helped to bridge the any kind of communication gap there was because that was one way we immediately felt very safe, very welcome, and very included.
Thank you for sharing that. And it's lovely to hear that you found kindness when you arrived. And you mentioned a few differences that you noticed around culture and traditions or habits we have in our countries. For you, were there any other difference in the workplace that you noticed?
I noticed that people are much more direct and unafraid to say what they need, what they want. Where I come from, because it's an Asian culture, the hierarchy is very strict, it's very vertical. So we are very conscious of this is my senior, that is my junior, and where is my place in the hierarchy. So you're very careful not to step over lines. But here I notice people seem to address other people, even, many years they're senior by the first name. And some people, there's some children, right? They call their parents by the first name or they call their parents' friends by the first name. Whereas to us, it's like everybody is an uncle and an auntie. So you have that sense of respect for authority and hierarchy. So that was something to get used to. Also very accepting and non-judgmental, I felt. Because where I come from, people are very conscious of their status. So it's you always identify yourself by what you're doing professionally. Whereas here, people can say anything and it's like nobody blinks and nobody looks funny at you. So whether you say, oh, I'm doing I'm a casual worker, or I'm the cashier at the supermarket, or I'm a tradie, or I'm in between jobs, it's okay. People don't judge you. And their attitude is more like, well, you're trying, you're doing your best. So, good on you. And I hope something good happens for you. But where I come from, it felt like if I didn't prove straight away when I first meet you that I am somebody and I've achieved something with my life, then I would feel very small.
And what led you to do what you do now for work?
It was because I am a lifelong introvert myself. So I know what it's like to have those moments where I feel I can't speak up or people are always telling me to speak louder, but my voice is soft and I don't like to talk over people, but other people talk over me and I don't really know how to express myself in a confident way and act like an outgoing sort of person. And so what I used to do was to take all the marketing advice of all the gurus out there who will tell you, oh, you must go to networking events, and then you must work the room, and then you must give out your business cards, you must do your 30-second elevator pitch, and this is how you do the pitch. And I tried all those things for one solid year, drove like 1.5 hours from where I am to across the city to where all those things were happening. And then after of that, a few months of doing that, I thought, why am I doing this? I remember one time standing on the threshold. I was about to go into this event. It was a huge room. The music was blasting. There were like maybe 60 or 80 people. Everybody was talking. There was music. People seemed to know each other. They were all standing around in their little groups. And I looked at it and I thought, this is not me at all. This is not how I like to interact with people. I don't think I belong here. Should I just go home now? But I had just driven 1.5 hours to get there. So I thought, all right, never mind. I'll just go down to the bathroom and calm myself first, give myself a few minutes to get some courage up and then I'll go into the room. And so I thought, after doing all that, I thought there must be another way to do networking for people who are like me, who are quiet, who are a bit reserved, who take time to warm up, who don't immediately want to talk and have a lot to say. Surely there must be something out there for people like us. So I went looking and I went on this app called Meetup and I typed in those words and I looked for, things to do with introverts and quiet people. And I didn't find anything. So I thought, well, maybe there's an opportunity here for me. So 8 years ago, I started my first Meetup group that was just for introverts and the highly sensitive people. And so since then, that's the one of the community aspect of what I do. But I also have a coaching side where I work one-on-one and in small groups with introverted people who maybe they have just been promoted. So they have to exert their authority. They have to assert themselves more in meetings and speak up more. But they feel like I'm not the kind who talks a lot. I like to let my work speak for itself. But how do I do that in a way that makes me visible? But I don't want to have to pretend and fake extroversion. So that's the challenge, right? So I guess that's the short version of what led me to do what I do.
And I find it really admirable that instead of thinking that there was something wrong with yourself, you took that as an opportunity to build something different. And you imagine that if you felt that way, there were other people who would feel the same way. And you proved that by organizing those events. And I would love to hear what they looked like. Where were they? Were they in a small venue, maybe no music or really quiet music? Or how was it?
I had to find out the hard way, but I had a very good head start because I knew what I liked. And I like quiet places. So initially, I remember the very first one, it was in winter. It was June. It was freezing cold. And I'd set up this event in a nice little Italian restaurant somewhere in the CBD. And I thought, I wonder if they're all introverts, maybe nobody will show up. So I just waited to see. And 14 people came in winter, with their beanies and their scarves, and none of them knew each other. And we all sat around this long table that the owner had kindly set aside for us, and we all looked at each other. It was a little bit awkward, but that's how it starts with that, that little awkwardness, that acknowledgement. Yes, we are all a bit different. We are the quiet ones. So I'm not going to say anything yet. I'm just going to watch you. And you're not going to say anything yet. You're going to watch me. And so we recognize that energy is different. So over time, I've learned from experience and by observing the members and the feedback that they give. So we go for things that are what is called shoulder to shoulder. That means there's no obligation to speak straight away. There is no pressure to say something beyond hello. We go to things that are like art exhibitions. We go to the museum a lot. We go for movies. We go for walks in a park. And then after that, we go for a coffee. We have a silent book club where we literally say, okay, we meet at this time and you have 1 hour and 15 minutes. Go to any corner of the library you like, read your book, no prescribed text for you, and then we'll come back, we go for a coffee, and we'll talk about whatever book you just read. And it seems to work very well. So the idea is to give them lots of warm-up time, no need to talk straight away. When they have warmed up enough, they will naturally talk because they realize we're all introverts. We're all this, a similar kind of vibe. And when you recognize that that person is like you, straight away, you just see them relax because they feel so understood and so seen and they feel safe. So once they are safe, they will start talking. That's what I learned.
It is really important to feel seen and understood. When I first arrived here, one thing I felt was that no one saw me because in English, I felt I had a different personality. I couldn't be funny. I couldn't be spontaneous. So it took several years to get to this point where I feel I can be myself when I speak in English. But I can imagine that the people that you guide and you mentor are those people who feel a little bit quiet. They feel a little bit, as they are introverts, they know their own value, but for them to show that value, it takes time and it takes trust. So what advice do you give for them to build meaningful relationships and build that trust?
That's a great question. The first thing I always get them to work on first is their relationship with themselves. Because a lot of introverts and quiet achievers think that the problem is themselves. They are too quiet, their voice is too soft, they're not assertive enough, they're not confident enough. Actually, that's not the problem. It's a context dependent thing. When I ask them certain questions, they realize the problem is not them. It's just that it's dependent on the context. For instance, if they're talking about something they know a lot about, they will have something to say. If they are one-on-one or with a small group, they are comfortable, they will have something to say. If they feel the energy is right and they have enough bandwidth for that occasion, they will have something to say. But if it's a lot of people, the atmosphere is very loud, lighting is either too bright, too dim. Some people are very sensitive to those things. If the energy feels off for them, people are talking over other people or not very considerate, and they're not making room for others to talk, they just keep talking, then they won't feel peaceful. They won't feel that they belong. And so they will just quietly stay on the sidelines. So it's very context dependent.
When you were saying that, I remembered as a child that in my groups, I always waited for my turn to speak. And because I had very loud friends, it was never my turn. So for me, even though I went through drama training and I have been able to evolve, I wonder if, in essence, I'm an introvert. So my question is, how do we know what we are? Because sometimes along the way, we condition ourselves to fit in the environment we grow in.
That's so true. That's so true. There are a lot of online quizzes that you can take for free, but the definition I like best is the one by Susan Cain in her book Quiet. And she uses the analogy of a social battery. So we all start off with a battery fully charged. When the introvert goes out and starts interacting with people, the battery starts to drain. Every conversation, every interaction, every meeting they go to where they have to talk, where they have to present and contribute and be seen and heard, that battery goes down. The extrovert is the opposite. The more they talk to people, the more people they meet, the more they have an occasion to say something, the battery gets charged. So their battery can be constantly charged and recharged, and they never run out of energy. Whereas the introvert, after say, let's say 2 hours or whatever, after that, they have to go away and be in a quiet place by themselves. So it's not that the introvert can't do the outward facing things like sales or networking or public presentations. It's just that they have to manage their energy carefully. So before the event, they have to do some preparation. During the event, they have to do something that amplifies their presence. And then after the event, they have to make sure they block in that time to relax and do nothing. And that's how they recharge.
I can relate to that. After events, sometimes I feel super tired, or the day after the event, it's a day that I usually have to rest because otherwise it gets draining if you don't give yourself that time to rest. And myself as a mother, sometimes I find it very hard to find that quiet space and that time for myself. So do you have any special advice for mothers or women who are in constant connection with others or relationships with others?
I think if you have young children, especially if your schedule is very hectic, schedule tiny breaks, micro breaks for yourself. Don't make it a big thing like, oh, I need to give myself 1 hour. I need to go to the spa. I need to get my nails done. Sometimes it's just not possible, even to get your nails done. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, I think most of us can manage that. Whether it's at the start of the day before everyone has risen, whether it's the end of the day when the children have gone to bed and you have a bit of time and you can sit in bed and read a book for 15 minutes before lights out. Anything that helps you to bring your state back to that calm, neutral state, that peaceful state. And whatever you choose to do, whether it's have a cup of peppermint tea or journal or listen to some meditative music, or just some activity, something that calms you, helps you come back to your center, helps you release any stress. I find stretching very useful for that too. Maybe yoga, maybe qigong, some breath work, whatever it is. I think we all have to experiment until we find that one thing or that combination of things that works for us.
I agree. And I think coming back to our bodies with breathing, with sensory information like going out, walking in nature, or even closing our eyes and visualizing a calm space brings us back to the present moment. I think there is a lot of anxiety around being around an environment that's overwhelming, and that leads to being out of balance. Our nervous system gets dysregulated. So thank you very much for the advice, because I think I can also apply that to my professional life. So when I'm a teacher and I teach 3 lessons in a row and non-break, like there's not an opportunity to take a break, that's when my body starts building up that tension. And it's really important that even if it takes 1 second, I call it the comma, in a sentence, you put that comma and you breathe. And that's one thing that I try to do every time before entering a classroom, just taking that 1 second to breathe, and that practice alone can lead me to being back in my center and giving the best of myself, because I think that's the idea, right? When we share from the place of authenticity, from the place of being who we truly are.
So glad you said that. Yeah, that is so amazing, because as a teacher, Solange, you also impact the students that you're teaching. So when you take that breath for yourself, you're also modeling for them that it's okay for them to be sometimes feel dysregulated, and that maybe that is something they can do too. They can practice that comma, they can practice that pause, take a breath before their next class, or when they're feeling some tension from group work, for instance. Maybe there's some quiet ones in your classroom who feel overstimulated by all the conversation going on. That would be so good for them too.
Yeah, and one thing I wanted to say is that I usually start my classes with stretches, because I feel that they need that, because they have been going through different subjects. They need that time to reconnect with themselves first before to be ready to learn, right? And also those brain breaks, luckily they're more often nowadays. When I went to school, that was not normal. Like, we were expected to sit quiet at a desk and work quietly, and maybe that's great for focus, but after several minutes, your body starts to crave that movement. And nowadays, I see that, especially for students who have special needs or special plans, they are allowed to have brain breaks and move around the classroom and have fidget toys. And I wanted to ask if that's something that introverts can benefit from as well.
I think definitely brain breaks, because we're not designed to be sitting for 8 hours at a time. And we've made this mistake of assuming that the longer we sit and the more still we sit, the better we learn. But we know, I think, from research that that's not how the body works. And that's why, lessons are, let's say, 50 minutes and then 10-minute break. I think that's perfect. But maybe even for some children, even sitting for 50 minutes is too much. So there has to be a way that incorporates, like, your brain breaks, your stretches, your returning to the body, remembering that we are a whole being. We are not just a brain. And we're not meant to be still, because that's actually a very modern invention, this whole concept of sitting still. The body is designed for movement. And I used to be really okay with that. For decades, I could just sit still and do my best work and all. But I'm learning more and more that actually it's really important to move, to stretch, to recharge the energy, to let the energy circulate. Because when you sit still for long periods of time, the energy stagnates. And without that circulation, the brain can't work anyway. So it's like a law of diminishing returns. The longer you sit and don't move, the more and more your brain capacity goes down.
Here I've heard they call it running on fumes. So when you don't have any more
Yes.
energy, but you keep going, and that has
Yes.
a negative impact in your productivity and in your stress levels at the end of the day. So, well, before we finish, I wanted to encourage everyone that has been listening to this conversation to find Serena on LinkedIn. I will share her contact details in the description of the podcast. And I wanted to thank you for your time and for your valuable contributions to this community. And before we say goodbye, I wanted to ask, what motivates you to keep growing and keep evolving and keep finding what makes you feel more authentic?
I think what keeps me moving and motivated is because I know there is something more, that the best is yet to be. I have not yet even reached, I feel like I've only just started my journey. And so there's so much more for me to discover, to learn about, for me to be curious about. So I get excited when I wake up in the morning thinking of, I wonder what I'm going to learn today. I wonder what new thing I can do today. I wonder who I'm going to speak with today, and what wisdom they're going to share with me. And so just thinking of all that the best is yet to come, that makes me excited.
Thank you. And it's lovely to hear that even being an introvert, those conversations excite you, and you are aware that maybe you don't know what to expect, but when you face that person, the right words will come. And sometimes that's how I feel with speaking a second language. Sometimes I feel like I need to prepare and have everything ready and be perfect with my speech and learn word by word what I want to say. But it came a day when I realized that I had to trust the process, listen to myself, listen to my body, and just be excited and curious about the person that is in front of me. So I'm very grateful for you to give me this opportunity of being present, being spontaneous, and learning from you.
Thank you so much, Solange.